Hi everyone, I'm Heather Jackson, the Senior Public Information Officer for Riverside University Health System's Medical Center and the Community Health Center. We're so excited today because we're going to have our pediatrician, our Chair of Pediatrics, Dr. Chad Vercio, here to answer some questions now that the CDC and the FDA approved the use of 12 and up for the Pfizer vaccine. And then after we talk with Dr. Vercio, we're inviting a special guest here today, a mother of four from Moreno Unified Valley School District, who will be here to ask some questions live to Dr. Vercio. So let's just get started.
Yes, let's.
Awesome. So first, Dr. Vercio, it seems like they're slowly approving the tiers for the vaccine. Does that mean because it's not safe? Why all the tiers slow release for all ages?
Well, we had to ensure it was safe in each age group. And, in pediatrics, we like to say that kids aren't just little adults, but they have very different, or they can have different pathophysiology or different physiology for them the way adults work. And so the different drug companies have approached this a little bit differently because Pfizer broke it down by 16 to 21, then 12 to 15, 5 to 11, and then 2 to 5, and then 6 months to 2 years. Whereas Moderna, from at least what we know so far, has opened trials for those 6 months to 16 years. Mm-hmm. And so they've taken a little bit of a different stance on it. But Pfizer has, as we all know now, has tested the vaccine in 12 to 15-year-olds, and it's been shown to be safe and effective.
Wow. So if some parent is excited and they want to come get their vaccine, what should they expect when it comes to scheduling appointments, and what does the succession look like? Is it the same as 2 shots and wait 2 weeks in between? What does that look like?
Sure. So they can schedule it here at RUHS. We have quite a few different sites that are administering the vaccine. You would get an initial dose and then a second dose 3 weeks after that would be the optimal timing. And so they should be scheduling an appointment after that first dose for the second dose.
Is there anything a parent should do when they're preparing for the vaccine? Do they have to prepare their kiddo? What do they need to do?
Yeah, I would just talk to your kids like you would normally for any other vaccine. Just reassure them that it's safe, that it's effective, it's helpful in preventing illness in them and other people. And the most common side effect that kids have is pretty much the same as adults, in that they're going to have some pain at the local site, and then they can have some fatigue or headache. And fever was a unlikely symptom. Only about 15% of kids had a fever in the age 12 to 15.
And so you were talking a little bit about Pfizer and their studies and testing it on ages. What about Moderna and Johnson & Johnson? Why aren't they getting approved? Should we be worried?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's anything specifically we should be worried about for those vaccines. They just have approached it a little bit differently. Moderna, spanning from what we know so far, the age range of 6 to 16, and we're not really actually sure if Johnson & Johnson, what they're doing in testing for pediatrics. But Pfizer, had studied the 12 to 15-year-old range with over 2,000 patients and determined that it was both safe and effective in that age range. And so they requested emergency use authorization and received that.
And speaking of emergency use, that's a big word. What does that mean? Does that mean it's, is it safe? Is it not safe? Why is it called emergency use?
Yeah, so very good question. The governing bodies have a process for a situation where something is deemed to be helpful, so it's effective, and determine the safety, but yet not release all of the information to the FDA that is typically required for a full review, which is extremely comprehensive. It's kind of opaque to those of us that are in the public, but this has been deemed safe, and it's been deemed effective. So just in California, we've given about 14 million, probably close to 15 million doses is my guess by now, since the last time I checked last week. And of the Pfizer vaccine, not in this particular age group, but total across the state. And very, very, very few people have had significant side effects. And so it's been really deemed to be safe across society. And then that adds to the safety of the 12 to 15-year-old age range. that, they are unlikely, because we haven't seen severe side effects in other ages, that they're unlikely to have those. And so then we, looked at the 2,000 patients that were in the trial, and they all did very well and had a very effective outcomes. Just to kind of speak to some of the effectiveness, there were 0 patients in the group that got the trial or got the vaccine during the trial that developed COVID, whereas there was 18 in the placebo group that developed COVID.
Wow.
And so, or had an infection of the virus. And so that speaks to the effectiveness. Also, the antibodies that were tested during the trial to see do they mount an antibody immune response were very robust. And so that, again, is another factor that shows the effectiveness of the vaccine.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Vercio.
Sure.
So that wraps up some of my questions. That gives you guys a quick overview of this new vaccine, or this vaccine that's being approved for 12 and up. Now we're going to invite Kelly Vera. She is a mother of 4 from Moreno Valley Unified School District, here to ask Dr. Vercio her questions.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. So I do have a few questions. My first being, do we know if there's any effects on a child's reproductive system? Have we gotten that far with it?
So that's a good question. I think a lot of parents are concerned about that issue. I'll say that there's really no biological explanation for why there would be any effects on the reproductive system. When we look at the vaccine itself, its components, and the antibody response that it causes or creates with the immune system, none of that would overlap with the reproductive system. And so it would be very, very unusual for that to come out suddenly, after the vaccine's been trialed. We haven't seen any effects of that in adults, and you would expect that if that were the case, that it would have shown up in adults by now, because we've vaccinated a lot of people already. So yeah, again, there's no reason to think that would be a side effect of the vaccine.
Perfect, thank you. And what about their just growing in general? Will it stunt their growth or have an effect on that?
Another good question. And again, I would say that there's really no reason to suspect that would be the case. There's nothing that would induce an antibody response that would affect the growth hormones of kids. Also, kids, there's really no reason that they would have any interference with their growth from the vaccine.
Perfect. And what would be the chances of the child after being vaccinated being infected?
That's a good question. I think that will be interesting as time goes on. We have seen some cases of breakthrough COVID after getting the vaccine, but that is very rare. And so if you look at the effectiveness in adults of the vaccine, it is greater than 90% effective, and also in preventing severe complications of COVID. So as I'd mentioned in the trial that they did, there were over 2,000 kids that were vaccinated. 0 of them developed a case of the viral infection, whereas in the placebo group, 18 kids did develop a case of the infection. And so that's 18 kids that can then potentially spread it to their family members who might be more at risk for having a severe case of COVID, or spread it to their friends. And so, for that reason, it seems like the vaccine is very safe and it's very effective. And so the risks don't outweigh the benefits. The benefits really, really do outweigh the risks.
Gotcha. Do you foresee that this being a mandatory vaccination for students to enter school in the future?
I can't say with any certainty. I think I would be surprised if that occurred, just because, I think there is some vaccine skepticism, and that I think people are generally understanding of that skepticism, even though they may not agree with it. And so I think it would be hard to implement a mandatory vaccine policy, but I can't predict the future.
Well, I appreciate you answering all my questions. I know it will help me decide for my kids and let them decide if they want to get it or not.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. As you know, we like to keep the conversation going. So please, parents out there, if you have some pertinent questions that you have, whether it's the 12 or up or the next tier coming up, please feel free to leave a comment in our comment section, or you can give us a direct message. Our physician will be happy to respond and give a response for you. And then, of course, if you would like to schedule an appointment, you can go to ruhealth.org, or you can call 800-945-6171. Thank you so much, and be well.